Chapter 1. Husband and wife. From now on, you are announced as husband and wife. Now you may kiss the bride. An awkward silence filled the church when the Pope announced it, and Hazel, who was standing there with her head bowed, finally raised her head. She looked at the Pope with her glassy, animated eyes, and he coughed. For the first time in his life, he was embarrassed to announce a marriage, and the last line was completely a disaster. He coughed to clear his throat and then continued. With that, the marriage is registered in front of the God, and our blessings are with the new couple. Once again, whispers could be heard, and a bitter smile formed on the face of Hazel, who bowed her head to show her respect to the Pope. He nodded back and she closed her eyes. Everyone was waiting to laugh at her, to make fun of her, and get the satisfaction of insulting her. But she did not want to give that satisfaction to them. She would not let them see her miserable state. After marriage, the husband holds the hand of his new bride and introduces her to the guests. But here she was standing alone on the day of her marriage, while the man had just sent his sword as his representative. Yes, Hazel had taken all the oaths of marriage with a sword under the mocking gaze of her family and so-called friends. But she would still not give them satisfaction to see her broken. So, once she turned towards the guests, there was a pride smirk on her face that surprised everyone. Her amber eyes that were mostly meek were filled with stars, and her fair skin was radiating under the chandeliers. Clad in a white gown, she was looking one of the most beautiful brides of the empire. Look how she is looking at everyone arrogantly, even when she is standing alone on the altar. Could anyone be more miserable than her? Let her be. She had only a few days left in her life. Why did we care about someone who is going to die anyway? The sound of laughter and scorns came after the sarcastic comments of her brothers and sisters, and soon everyone started laughing at the girl who was standing there alone with her head held high. Yet the shine in her eyes did not dim, and her smile did not fade away. But I did not get it. Why is her husband not here? I came especially to see who she was getting married to, asked the daughter of the Duke Fenoralia, and the girl beside her chuckled. You do not know, the matter was. Hazel, His Majesty is coming to meet you. Quickly stand up and make yourself presentable. Hazel, whose face was covered with paint here and there and her hands were still holding the paintbrush and lost in the painting in front of her, raised her eyes and looked at the maid with a frown. I am not in a mood to joke with Anne. I am busy. The girl replied with a frown as immersed herself in the painting again. Anne sweated. She was already scared to her wits when she received the message, yet the girl thought that she was joking. Maidelian, no, princess. I am not joking. We have just received a message from the main palace that His Majesty is coming to pay you a visit. So you better change clothes and wash the paint off your face. Do you want to look unpresentable to your father on your first meeting with him? Asked the girl in a bit of an intimidating voice, but Maidly just stood there blankly. The paint brush fell from her hands with a clank, creating a new stain on the white carpet, to which Anne looked with a frown, but Hazel did not even notice the scowl on her face. She was lost in the words of her maid. His Majesty, the Emperor of the Flamingston Empire, her father was coming to pay her a visit. That also for the first time since she had started living in the palace. It would be her second meeting with her father. She could not believe that it was really happening now that she had lost all the hopes of meeting him. But why now? Was there any occasion? Did she forget something? No matter how she tried to analyze it, she could not think of a valid reason. Hazel, what are you waiting for? Do you want to meet your father with that red and blue face? Huh? The cold and sharp voice of Anne and the jerk on her hands brought her back to her senses. No, I will go and dress up at once. Hazel stood up and ran towards her room. Hey, do not fall down, or you will greet His Majesty with broken teeth or limbs. Anne shook her head at the girl who was stumbling on her own gown as she tried to run faster than lightning. Darn, I need to go and prepare a few dishes too. she mumbled as she ran towards the kitchen with faster speed than Hazel. When Hazel reached her room, she took a breath of relief. Her room had nothing like a princess. It was a simple room with minimalist furniture and simple decoration, with a small bed, without a canopy, and a small closet. 2 chairs and a small sofa on the side, with a small coffee table with red carpet on the floor. Hazel opened the closet and shuffled all her dresses with a frown. It has been more than a year since she had brought any new dress, so she was not sure which dress would still look presentable. Finally, after looking at all of them for too long, she settled for a blue dress, hoping that the dark color would be enough to hide small tears the dress had. Hazel, hurry up, the Majesty is already here. The dress in my hand slipped on the floor as I jumped on my place. How could he reach here so early? It is okay, you will be fine. Let's just wash your face and get you ready in a bit. Hazel felt bad for Anne, her only friend and mate, as she was also shuffling and making the preparations for today. Her expression softened and she nodded when she said so. With a smile, she came in and helped Hazel in washing her face and made a small bun of her unruly hair. She even adjusted Hazel's dress and took out the only necklace she had. It was left by Hazel's dead mother as her remembrance. She looked at it with longing eyes when she felt Anne's hand on her shoulder. You are looking beautiful, my lady. Your mother would have been proud while seeing you. Hazel smiled, but her eyes widened when she looked around. What happened? Hazel asked as she looked at her worried face with concern. Nothing. I think that I have left cookies in the oven. I need to go and look before they get charred. Will you go out and greet His Majesty till then? Hazel chuckled, looking at her worried face, and nodded. All right, then I should go and give my father company till you bring the tea and snacks for him. Hazel did not know why, but she felt that the fear that was crawling in her heart lessened, and she felt light-hearted after talking to Anne. With slow and poised steps, Hazel walked towards the small hall of her annex palace. There was a man standing in the mid of the hall looking at the painting she was making a few minutes ago. It was the painting of a fair she had read about in the books. She wanted to go there, but she could not. She had made it with her imagination. Your Majesty, it is an honor to have you in my humble abode. She held the corner of her dress a bit too tightly as she bowed her head in front of the man who had given her birth. Yet it was only the second time she saw him. Hearing her voice, suddenly the man turned to look at her. His golden hair was set in his back, and his blue eyes were intimidating. His golden mustache and beard had taken a large part of his face. Even when he was meeting his daughter after such a long time, there was no warmth in his cold eyes. He was just looking at her from top to bottom, as if he was assessing the value of an asset. Her nervousness started to return when the man did not reply to her greetings. Thank goodness she was holding the dress with her hands, so that her sweaty hands were hidden, and so was her fear. You have grown into a beautiful lady, Hazel. Finally, a breath of relief left her mouth when she heard him complimenting her. Raise your head and take a seat. You are my daughter, not a subject. She wanted to ask if he remembered it only now, but she pursued her lips and nodded. She did not want to create a scene and disappoint Anne. She took slow steps towards the sofa and sat on it like Anne had taught her. Still, a frown formed on the face of her father, which he hid it hurriedly with an amiable smile, but his eyes were still cold. Hazel, I wanted to congratulate you for your coming-of-age day that is next week. Her eyes flickered and enlarged, and her lips parted in surprise. She was not expecting him to remember her, since he had never come to wish her birthday all this while in the past 18 years. I know that you have a few grievances that I have neglected you, but you have to understand that the life of a king is never simple. I have many responsibilities to take care of. She nodded as she did not want to drag the matter. Though she knew she was mistreated because she was the result of one night stand he did not even remember when he had. But she was still grateful that he had given her a place to live when her mother died, or she would have died long ago, or would have been taken as slave by a rich old man. I know, Father. I apologize for my insolence and thank you for congratulating me. I am honored that you come personally to wish me. The smile on her face was genuine that reached to her eyes and his eyes flickered. His face turned to look at the other side abruptly, and she frowned. She turned where he looked only to find Anne coming with the trolley, and she sighed. The girl who was asking her to be brave was looking more anxious than her. "Hail to the son of the empire, your majesty." Anne bowed her head and wished the emperor, who took a deep sigh and nodded. Anne stood and took the dishes from the trolley and placed them on the table in front of the emperor. "I am not only here to wish you for your coming-of-age ceremony. I am here to announce that I have fixed your marriage too." Thump! The spoon Hazel had picked up to serve him. A meal fell on the floor as she looked at the man with horror-filled eyes. She had read in many books that the nobles only help in upbringing his illegitimate kids, so that he would marry them off to increase his contacts one day. It was no less than selling them for their benefits. Her eyes turned cold as she looked at the man who was there to tell her that he had finally decided to get the amount he had spent in taking care of her by selling her off. "You need to calm down, Hazel. Maybe it is a chance for you to get out of these four walls and find your happiness with a man who will cherish you. You need to calm down, Hazel. Maybe it is a chance for you to get out of these four walls and find your happiness with a man who will cherish you." Hazel looked at Anne with wide eyes. How could she speak out that loudly in front of the emperor? Was she not afraid that he would kill her? Her head snapped to her father, but surprisingly there was no reaction on his face, as if he did not hear her. A frown formed on her face as she looked at her father with a confused look. "What is it? Are you not happy that I am going to marry you?" he asked in a cold voice as the warmth on his face dissipated, and Hazel realized that he had heard Anne. He had just decided to feign ignorance conveniently. But she also realized that she did not have any choice but to accept the marriage for now, or else her father would be furious. She was sure that the man did not love her to show her any sympathy. It would be better for her that he thought that she was an obedient person before she could come to a decision. So she bowed her head and shook it. "No, father, how could that be? I am just surprised at the sudden news." Her voice was meek and her head was bowed, that surprised the ego of the man sitting in front of her. He nodded with a pleased smile on his face. "That is fine. You still have some time left. You will get married on the day of your coming of age and will travel to the family of your husband on the very same day. So start your preparations. I would arrange for a teacher for you in the garden to come and teach you some etiquette of a noble lady." She wanted to laugh at his thoughtfulness. Only now did he remember that she needed to be taught too. But then could it be that she was getting married to a higher noble? That was why he was putting some effort, even if it was minimal, as she was sure that he would not have taken that much initiative if it had been anyone commoner who could offer him a good deal. But then there was a chance that she was the second wife of any old fat noble who was already the father of children older than her, or else who would want her as his wife. She was even surprised that someone other than the royal family knew about her existence too. "Since there is nothing else, I would take my leave first." He stood up ready to leave, without even giving a single look to the table that was filled with all types of dishes by Anne. Only I knew how much hard work she had done in preparing them. Poor girl, I did not have the prowess to teach my father a lesson. Wait, I remembered I still did not know anything about my husband, not even his name. Then how would I decide whether I should marry him or not? After all, I did not want to end up getting tormented by the main wife all my life and shed tears, while hiding in my room only to get molested by a sleazy man. Only the thought made my skin crawl, and I shivered badly. The man gave me a side glance with his indifferent eyes, yet his face filled with annoyance. He did not look pleased that I had stopped him in his tracks, but it was a matter of my whole life. "Hazel," Anne called me in a worried voice, but I gave her an assured look. It would be fine to ask about the name of my husband. Right. But when he looked at me giving an assured look to a maid, his frown only grew further. He stomped his feet in annoyance as he turned completely to look straight into my eyes. Would you even speak? Why have you stopped me? His chilly voice rose all the hair of my body, but I gulped the fear and replied in a clam voice. Father, I think you forgot to tell me the name of my future husband. I asked in a meek voice, but a smile started to form on his cold face, but it was neither pleasant nor warm. Do you even know the names of a few nobles, huh? How would you even know who he is even when I tell you his name? He asked as he titled his head while his gaze bore hole in my heart. How could he be so heartless? Did he even look at me as his daughter? She wiped the sweat forming on her hands as she looked at the worried face of Anne, her only friend and family. I still want to know the name of the man I am going to spend my whole life with. Hazel replied in a low but confident voice as she looked at the man with resolute eyes. Though she had never met a single noble all her life, she had read all the books that existed in the empire. She had even read the books issued by the royal family that contained the details of all the nobles many times that she knew everyone by heart. A single glance at them, and she would be able to recognize all of them. The man looked at the stubborn girl with a SMRK. Even if she knew the name or the person, it was not like she could change her future. If she tried to do something funny, the man was capable of feeding her even from the depth of hell. She was bound to him the day he had announced her as his future wife, that even gods could not change the decision, yet the girl was trying to outsmart him. How funny. Rafael Casanova de Carta, the name rang in my ears like the siren. She felt the dread filling her heart. All the blood of her body froze, and she could hear her heart thumping like crazies. Thump, she fell on the floor as her knees gave away, while the word continued to pierce all her hopes to live a happy life. She had heard this name before. She had read about him and his empire. He is not a human. How much time had passed when she finally came back to my senses. She was standing alone in the room while her father had gone for a long time. The room was cold and deserted like her life, yet she had always realized that at least she had a place to live and good food to eat with Anne on her side. But now, she was not sure anymore how she would live when she had been asked to be a sacrificial lamb in the name of marriage. Are you okay, my lady? She looked back at the girl who had always called me by name even when she was the princess, and this was the first time when she was calling her my lady. It is okay to cry sometimes if you feel like it, she assured Hazel as she looked at her with concerned gaze, and the tears that were on the brim, and threatening her to fall any moment came out like a broken dam. Anne, they are not even selling me to a human. Hazel whispered in between her sobs while her tears stained her face and wetted her dress. You are brave enough to handle even demons, my lady. I have faith in you. Hazel shook her head as she heard Anne's words. I do not want to marry a night creature, Anne. Please help me. Help me in running away from here. The girl pleaded miserably, but just when the words left her mouth, 2 guards entered in. Hazel looked at them wide in eyes. No one needed to tell her why they were here. And as she had expected, they opened their mouth coldly and told her, We are here to keep you safe till the day of your marriage, my lady. She was done for. Now she was under the gaze of 2 guards so that she could not run away, and she was barely left with any time. You will be fine, my lady. Maybe the marriage is not that bad. Anne tried to coax the girl who was turned into a mess as if her sunny life had turned into a frozen dream. You will survive this, my lady, and soon you will realize that the dark clouds were actually filled with sweet rain that would bring the spring. But no matter what Anne said, Hazel could not see any silver lining in her life. Why don't you go and rest for a while, my lady? The governess will be here soon. One of the guards said awkwardly as they saw the girl shaking her head and crying like she had lost everything now and then. "They are right, my lady. Come, let me escort you in. You need strength and rest to survive this." Hazel wanted to deny it, but she had no strength left after crying for so long. Her wails had turned into sobs and hiccups, while her whole face had turned messy with stains. Anne held Hazel's hand and helped her in walking towards her room. "Shush, everything would be fine. You have survived worse. Just do not give up so easily." Anne patted the back of the girl soothingly. She had seen the girl growing in front of her eyes. A lot of times she had thought that she would break down and would not be able to bear the loneliness, the insults and coldness of her family. Yet every time the girl had only grown stronger, like a tree that would grow no matter what the season was. She knew that Hazel had a strong desire to live, and she would only grow after this incident too. Soon the girl started hiccuping and closed her eyes, yet Anne continued to rub the back of the girl until she was sure that she had been sleeping soundly. Once sure that she was asleep, Anne stood up only to hear her hiccuping again. "I do not want to die, Anne." Her heart broke when she heard the sound of Hazel with tear-stained eyes, but she took a deep breath and closed the curtains of her room and walked out. "Do you think she would be able to handle it?" Yes, she was looking very heartbroken. Anne looked back at the two other girls that were wearing the same uniform of maids as her and sighed. Since the decision was already taken, there was not much to discuss. Hazel would be fine after some time, but it also means that we have to leave soon. Anne looked at both of them with a daunting gaze, and they took deep breaths. "This time came earlier than I had thought." Yes, even I was expecting that it would take a few more years for her to get married. The both took a deep sigh, but when their gaze met the cold gaze of Anne, they took a step back in fear. "Why are you so angry? Do not tell us that you were prepared for the news," retorted the girl as she tried her best to keep her facade in front of Anne. "No, but I was sure that was the case when I heard that her scum father was coming to meet her. The man did not even explain to her that the man would not hurt her. She was looking too scared." "You should not have let her read those books in the first place," chided the second girl, and Anne sighed as she sat on the chair. "I thought that the night creature would fascinate her, who thought that she would end up getting scared of her future husband." "Wake up, miss. The governess is already here." Hazel frowned in her sleep as she turned and slept again, but the beenaging on door only increased. Her lips pursued into a thin line, but she did not try to open her eyes at all. She was feeling so exhausted that she had no desire to open her eyes and check who was on the door. She had decided to sleep until the end of the world. "My lady, if you did not open the door, then I have to break it and call your father." Hazel had turned to the other side, ignoring the empty threat of the man, when she heard that her father was being called again. She did not want to see the cold face of that man again, who had sold her off to a night creature. She stood up hastily and ran towards the door. She glared at the man who had instructed her, but his blank face did not change. "My lady, the governess is waiting for you." Although he was calling her my lady, there was no respect in his eyes. Hazel pursued her lips, but she did not have any other choice, so she nodded and walked behind him. They crossed half of the palace and then reached the hall where an old woman was waiting for her. Hearing the knock on the door, the lady turned and looked at Hazel. She eyed Hazel from top to bottom and then snorted. Her eyes were cold, that made Hazel's face harden too. "So, you are the one who was going to be the empress of the Farandensine Empire." Hazel had a frail body with a soft face. She was damn beautiful with her platinum blonde hair and mesmerizing green eyes that looked like emeralds. But she was too innocent with her face. She did not look like she could handle the night creatures. Hazel just nodded as she entered. What do you know about them?" Though the voice was stern, there was a hint of concern in the voice of the lady. Hazel raised her head but shook it. Though she had a bit of an idea, she was not sure what her role was as the empress. "The night creatures are not like the myth said. They can roam in the daytime too, but they prefer to stay in the cold places where the sun is not that prominent. They can eat, play, dance, run, walk, do anything like us, but they have blood with that too. Though most of the vampires keep blood in bottles, mixed with other supplements to keep it safe. But most of nobles suck blood directly from the host, and the most delicious person for them is their wife. Hazel shivered when the words sunk into her mind. It meant that she was nothing but his blood bank. As if reading the mind, the governess nodded her head. Yes, that is what I was trying to say. Except that they love beauty and revealing dress and a bit of sensuality, and most importantly, you have to be obedient to them. Now we will start with the eating lessons. The training continued with the governess, but most of what Hazel learnt was, though she was going to be the empress of the Farandentian Empire, her basic work was to look enticing and serve as food to her husband. It only increased her fear to get married and leave for their empire right then. Soon the day of her marriage arrived, the day she was going to be announced as an adult. So here Hazel was getting married to the emperor of the Faranshine Empire, Raphael Casanova de Carta. This alliance would be like a peace treaty between both nations, so that the fear that had crawled in the hearts of humans would decrease and threatening war for the past few years could be postponed. You are doing your best to serve the empire. The citizens will always be grateful to you, said my father as he patted Hazel's shoulder when she walked towards the hall. Hazel smiled and nodded as she assured him that she was fine with his decision, not that she did not have any choice. Though she did not love anyone else or have something noble to do here, she was just an extra after all. She was still scared about her future. She had heard that the man did not even come out to meet the royal conveys that went to receive the orders of her marriage. Vampires were famous for their beauty, yet he was so mysterious that very few had seen him. Do not worry, he will not kill you, since you are the symbol of peace between both nations, her governess assured her as she sat beside the empress, Hazel's stepmother, who looked at her with pity. There were all her sisters and brothers whom she had never seen. They were looking at her as if she was a scapegoat who was going to die any moment. She had never thought that this would be the way she would meet with her so-called family for their first time. He will not kill me because of the peace treaty. Hazel repeated these words like a chant, but still she was feeling anxious. Her palms were turning sweaty and her stomach was churning. Do not worry too much or else you will look ugly in your own marriage, teased Anne, and Hazel sighed. If only I could take her with me, she mused, but she did not have the courage to ask Anne to risk her life by following her. You are looking too beautiful, my lady. Hazel nodded and looked at the mirror. The maids have spent all day in making her look beautiful and ready for this grand day. She was wearing a red dress as the norm of their nation, instead of the white one like other princesses worn in their marriages. Her golden hair was prepared in a bun covered with flowers of real gold and adorned with pearls and rare gemstones. She was wearing a red dress as the norm of their nation, instead of the white one like other princesses worn in their marriages. Her golden hair was prepared in a bun covered with flowers of real gold and adorned with pearls and rare gemstones. She was wearing a necklace that was shining brighter than the moon and a matching bracelet and earring. Her fingers were left empty so that he could put a ring in it. And other rings did not give competition to what he had chosen for her. The makeup was done perfectly, with her lips redder and her cheeks creating a blush. Her eyes were shimmering, and her emerald orbs were looking like two small moons. Yet she was not happy to look so beautiful at once. As a princess, she should have received this kind of treatment daily, but she had lived no better than maids. Like an extra, she had always lived an outcast wife, and now even when she was getting married, she would live a miserable life in the unknown world. You are looking too worried, my lady. As a princess, you should always be calm, told Anne as she rubbed Hazel's back a bit, trying to make her feel better. My lady, did you not like the makeup or jewelry? Asked the maid who was given the task to doll Hazel up. Her eyes were teary as she looked at Hazel. That confused her. She did not understand why she was so worried about her when they did not even know each other. But then it might be Hazel's last chance to see so many humans around her. So, she did not dwell on the matter and cherished the concern she was getting from them. Her expectant eyes and the worry formed on my Anne's face made Hazel realize that she still had not replied. "No, it is just perfect," Hazel replied with a smile that came out stiff. A knock on the door interrupted their thoughts, and shortly after a court lady came in. "Hazel, we have to leave now," said the governess that came behind the court lady. She nodded as she knew that they had shown more than enough patience by waiting for her, until she replied to the maids and looked so many times into the mirror. Hazel stood up from her seat with a heavy heart, and Anne bent to hold the bottom of the heavy dress so that she could stand properly. "Where is father?" Hazel asked, as mostly fathers escort daughters on the altar of marriage. Though they did not have a good relationship, at least this much: she deserves to be the sacrificial lamb. "He might be busy, therefore I was asked to take you out. Is there some problem with it?" asked the governess, and Hazel shook her head. She was a fool to think that her father would come out to escort her. What was the sense in expecting from the people who never cared about her anyway? They did not care if she was happy or not. Then why was she giving them a chance to see her upset? Why was she making a miserable face, since when she has been this vulnerable? No, Hazel shook her head as she mustered all her courage, and a bright smile formed on her lips, making everyone around her enchanted to it, as they smiled back with the same enthusiasm. "Then I will see you in the hall," told Anne as she hugged Hazel one last time and left another maid. Now only Hazel and the governess was left in the room. "Shall we?" she asked as she looked at Hazel with a bit of impatience. Hazel nodded, taking a deep breath, and after a minute they walked out of the room. The procedure was simple. She would walk to the altar where the groom would be waiting for her, and then they would exchange vows and kiss each other. After that she had been escorted in a carriage to the Farenshine Empire, where her life would be started, and there only she would meet the other family members of her new husband. An empress could never show her fear. There is another crown of confidence on her face except this one. And now you are going to be the empress, the ruler of a nation. You have to be strong, Hazel. This was the first time someone had felt that she would not be the food but a ruler. It made Hazel understand the gravity of the situation. "I will try my best to survive, my lady. Thank you for teaching me everything." Hazel tried her best to fake confidence on her face. She raised her head and walked proudly, though her hands that were holding her dress had turned sweaty. She was having trouble walking in that long dress, as she had never worn one with a meter long behind her. It was too heavy, and with the high heels it was taking too much struggle, yet she walked poised. Everyone turned to look at her when she entered the altar, and she smiled brightly towards them, as if it was a marriage with the one she loved. She could see their mocking face, and the one that was filled with disgust, as if they were waiting for her to make a joke of herself, or wanted to see how an abandoned and forgotten princess would be sacrificed, so that the chances of war would almost end with her sacrificial marriage, and that was what made a knot on her stomach. Only when the Pope coughed, she realized she was already there. But what surprised her was that she was standing there alone with only a sword by her side. I looked confused, but everyone only scoffed and looked at me as if I was a fool. Well, the prince did not have time to attend the marriage, so he sent his sword to attend the marriage. Hazel looked at the scenery passing through the window with a lost face. The trees and the large lake, she would have looked at them with wonder if it would have been any other time but now. She did not even know what was in front of her eyes. Not even did she get married to a sword instead of a man. She was even asked to kiss it in front of everyone. Hazel could not help but curse the so-called bat in her heart once again. She did not care if he was so powerful and a night creature. She deserved some respect too, even if she was going to die. She wanted to die with pride. Live your life well as the empress, my daughter." She wanted to laugh at the words of her so-called father. But before she could scorn and shout at her father, since she was the empress now, she should have some power. She was dragged to the carriage by the maids. Her brothers and sisters, whom she was meeting for the first time, waved at her, as if she was a knight that was going to sacrifice in the war. Let's bet, for how many days would she be able to survive? Do you think she would even pass the palace and meet her husband? I heard that he was the only ugly night creature. That was why he did not dare to come here. What a poor luck. The only thing that was good about night creatures was their beauty. She didn't even get that. Well, at least, she was the one who was chosen. She wanted to punch all of them. How could they be so cold towards her when she had never harmed anyone? She did not even remember who said what things except that they all waited for one thing. That was her death. Was that how a family was supposed to be? Though she knew that she would never get an equal treatment due to her mother being the maid of the palace, and she was the result of a one-night stand, she had never thought that her ending would be this soon. Even her governess looked at her as if she was looking at a corpse. She did not even have the confidence that Hazel would survive even when she was the one who had taught them. She wanted to shout and tell all of them that she was not dead yet, but she was not confident enough how long she would survive. She waited all this time to get a single assurance that only Anne could give her. But until she was dragged into the carriage and left the palace, Anne was nowhere to be seen. Had she lost hope in me too? Hazel took a deep sigh as she leaned on the seat of the carriage. The carriage was luxurious and grand. It was adorned with rare gemstone and was showing how big empires had enough wealth to splurge on the vehicle that only a woman can dreamt. Her eyes fell on both maids that had come to escort her to the palace. Their faces were pale and gloomy too, as if they were going to receive their death punishment. Looking at their faces made her further gloomy. She felt dizzy as the carriage got closer to her destination, just when they crossed the borders of the empire. The place turned eerie. The winds were so cold and howling that she shivered. It was more like the sound of shrieking of the souls that had received an early and painful death. She could see the mountain a bit away from where the carriage was. Even they were covered with a veil of mysterious fog and dark clouds. The snow had covered the land completely, like a layer of soft white flowers that had been decorating her grave. Everything around her was so gloomy that her heart dropped, and unpleasant feelings had started to cover her completely. Her heart started to beat irregularly as the carriage continued to move towards a castle. It was a big and white castle whose roofs were covered with snow, just like the path. As Hazel entered the door of the castle, the band that was waiting for the arrival of the bride started playing the songs of welcome. Though the sound of the song was beautiful, Hazel could only feel that they were playing her last tribute to humanity, as she was nothing more than a sacrificial lamb. But her heart came out of her chest when the carriage stopped abruptly. All the maids looked at her with pale faces. Their expressions were nothing better than her. "If I go in, I will die," she muttered under her breath as she looked at the large amount of maids and knights that were standing on the door of the castle, waiting for her to alight out of the carriage. But if I did not go in and try to run away, I would still die. It was certain that her father had made sure that the carriage would not stop anywhere, but at the door of the palace, so she did not dare to play any trick. Running from here only meant that she would die the second she would run. "If you are going to die anyway, at least choose a way that would save our lives," pleaded the scared girls who looked at her as if she was their last hope. A mocking laugh formed on the face of Hazel. They all used her as if she was nothing but an extra to be discarded easily, while they would enjoy the fame of being the family who sacrificed their daughter for the well-being of their empire and humanity. And yet they think that they were righteous. "Ha, to think that I will be thinking about you even when I am going to die anyway. You sure have the guts. Now I even want to see how the Stagenrib Empire would survive." The girl gritted her teeth as she looked at the maids who did not care about her at all, and then the bouquet of flowers she was holding in her hands. It felt more like a chain to me. She knew that everyone in the empire was only waiting to see how Hazel was going to die, and how long she would be able to endure. While she was still in her thoughts, the door of the carriage was knocked. She almost jumped from her seat but took a breath of relief when she saw that it was only servants and soldiers. She scanned the faces and body of the maids to see the difference, but she did not find any, though she could notice the red eye of the knight standing in front of her. At least maids are human. She even noticed that not all of them had a dark shade of red, they were light and bright red. "My lady, we are here to escort you," replied the maids in a blank face. Not a single trace of warmth or happiness could be seen in their voices. Her eyes even went behind her when she noticed that the line of maids were never ending, and the whole ground was covered with flowers and red carpet in the middle of it. She had not expected the place to look that beautiful. If only her husband would have been normal, then it would not have been any less than a fairy tale. Instead of being joyous, she felt only fear crawling in her heart. At least my death would be grand and full of extravagance. She was ready to get sold, but she had never thought that she would reach straight to heaven. "Pardon, did you say anything, my lady?" asked the maids when they saw that she still had not opened the door and muttered something under her breath. Hazel blinked and was about to shake her head when a strange thought built up in her mind, and nodded her head with a smirk on her face. If she was going to die, she would drown the whole ship with her. She would make sure that her whole empire would regret choosing her as sacrificial lamb. "My lady," the maid called the lost girl again, as she had still not opened the door of the carriage. When they say that she was smirking, eyes still not replying to them, they felt annoyed and their faces turned hard. Did the girl really take herself as the empress? She was nothing but a pawn, a clown that was sent for a peace alliance. "Your Majesty is waiting for you, my lady," said the maid in a hard and sharp tone, so that the girl would move. Her eyes turned cold when she felt the disdain in the eyes of the maids and knights. Yet they all were waiting for her here. They were here to serve us. "So?" she asked, as she raised a brow nonchalantly and leaned back on the seat of the carriage. They looked at each other with bewilderment, and then looked at her with a frown. "My lady, you have to come with us to meet His Majesty, so that they could kill you for your presumptuous behavior," they added in their hearts as they looked at the arrogant and ignorant girl. "No," she replied again, as she blew her nails that had been painted red. "No, I apologize, but there is some confusion, my lady. What the hell was the girl talking about? Did she lose her mental balance with the shock of getting married to an eccentric night creature?" They all looked at her with scorn, confusion, and annoyance, but none of them felt pity on her. "There is no confusion. I'm not coming with you," replied Hazel with a deep sigh. They think that I was a retard, but they failed to understand even a simple word like no. She shook her head at their foolish behavior and superior thoughts. "Excuse me, my lady, why would you not come with us?" asked the head maid, who was going to be the lady in waiting for this crazy empress. "Because you are not the one I am married to." Hazel shrugged her shoulders and looked at all of them as if they were fools. "Ah, your Majesty is waiting for you to only meet you. But if you would not come, then how are you going to meet the person you are married to?" explained the maid as if she was dealing with a 5-year-old kid, and Hazel chuckled. "So they seriously think that I was a retarded person. If he is waiting for me, then he should be the one to come and receive me. I will not come out, unless your Majesty would come to take me personally," she replied with an arrogant tone, and then closed the curtains once she was done. They all were shocked when she called the emperor so casually. Had she not been informed about her future husband even a bit? Did she not know that she was in the land of night creatures and an eccentric tyrant at that? How did she even dare to ask him to serve her? They all looked at the closed window and then each other with fear. If she would not come out of the carriage, then they would die with her too. If she wanted to die, Then she could. Why was she dragging all of them? The knights gritted their teeth and decided to take her out forcefully when the curtains were opened again. A smile bloomed on their lips as the girl finally realized her mistake. One more thing, ask him to be dressed up in a matching groom's dress. They all looked at Hazel horrified. Even if she had lost her senses, why was she dragging all of them with her? She better go and die herself. My lady, your majesty would not appreciate your actions. They tried to hint to her that she could be in trouble, but the girl just snorted. Wait, I am not done yet. They all looked at her horrified when they heard her, but she continued to sit there calmly with an arrogant look on her face. But only Hazel knew how scared she was. Her hands had turned sweaty, and her heart was running a marathon in her ribcage. She could feel that her heart would burst out any moment. But she was still adamant on her act, as dying with a heart attack would still be better than dying when all the blood had been sucked dry. The blood in her body flowed harder, and a tinge of red came on her face due to the impact. Once he would be here, he had to bring a ring for me and then pledge that he would only love me and have me as her lover and wife. Not even once would he look at another woman, only then would I come out of the carriage, she added with her chin held high in the air. It was a common knowledge that vampires love sex and woman as much as they love blood. Both are their weakness. They are creatures that enjoy pleasure and debauchery. Except for a few, none of the vampires had one lover. That was why many did not even marry for hundreds of years, since they have a longer life. They do not care about things like lineage and family like humans, but tend to enjoy themselves. And the emperor was even free from these ridiculous rules, as he was allowed to have as many women as he wanted as his lovers and concubines, and he could even have 3 wives. To think that a human would dare to demand loyalty from the emperor of night creatures, even when the marriage was nothing but an alliance that was forced on them, was an eye-opener for all of them. Many were not even able to react to her words. They were just standing there with enlarged eyes and parted lips. But not even a single of them moved. Tusk, who would have thought that the staff of a famous emperor would be this tardy and insolent? She replied in a scornful voice as she looked at all of them with disdain. Only then did the knights and maids come back to their senses. But the white faces of maids were making it clear that they did not dare to go to His Majesty and ask what she had said, but the knights, they still have their rationality there. They all looked at one of them whose eyes were darkest among them. Her governess had taught her that the rank of the vampires could be seen through their eyes. The darker the eyes, the higher rank he had due to his purity. The man gritted his teeth and walked forward in front of all the maids who left his way with bowed heads. What did you say? Do you really want us to inform your majesty about your foolish demands? He asked as he looked at the girl with cold and indifferent eyes. But her expressions turned colder when the words left his mouth. She looked at him with a cold and intimidating face. Ha, to think that even a servant would dare to ask questions to me. The Empress was really an eye opened on how ill-mannered you all are. Just you wait. I would make sure that discipline would be followed and everyone would know their place. Now are you going or not? The last sentence came so frostily that the vampire gritted his teeth. He felt humiliated that the girl dared to insult him. She was nothing but their meal, yet she was trying to show her dominance on them. If she wanted to die, then he would make sure that it would happen miserably. Very well, I will go and inform your majesty about all your instructions. He nodded and was about to turn when his eyes met Alfred, the aide of your majesty. His eyes enlarged, but he looked down before the man could notice it. Sir Alfred, why are you here? He asked in a tone of respect, but the man did not spare him a glance as he looked around with deep penetrating eyes. His aura could be felt from the distance, and all the maids bowed their head deep to not come in the eyes of the man. Hazel was observing everything keenly trembling when she felt the presence of the man, but kept her stance and did not change her adamant and cold face. I am here to see why are all of you taking so much time to escort the Empress. The man finally looked into the direction of Hazel as he asked the question. Is there some problem, my lady? He asked in a voice that was neither respectful nor too cold. Yes, there is. I am asking the maids and knights, but none of them is taking it seriously, she replied as she raised her head high, showing that she was not at all affected by his aura and presence. The vampire's gaze flickered, but he did not say a word as he looked at the knights. What is it that the lady wants? Fulfill her every wish right now, as she is the new empress of the palace. What do you mean by the new empress? She asked with a frown. Was she not the only empress? She had confirmed it umpteenth time that the vampire did not have any other wife. Am I not the only empress the empire has? She asked in a cold and rebuking voice, but the vampire only nodded, but a cold smirk from red on his face. Of course, after all, the previous 3 empresses have already died. The man did not stay once he was done talking. He turned and left, telling everyone that he would go and inform your majesty personally about the demands of his new wife. Now everyone was waiting for the order of her death punishment. What do you think? Your majesty would send him to prison or would come personally to snap her neck? Asked the knight. I do not think that the girl was worth enough to come personally by your majesty. We are enough to kill her on one order of his majesty. Yes, I was even surprised that Sir Alfred had come personally to see if the princess had arrived or not. Hazel could hear the sarcastic comments of all the staff around her. Even though she knew that her end was near, she had never thought that others would bet over it. How cruel they were. She hated how they treated her as a piece to bet upon. On the other side, in a dark room. I am glad that you have accepted the alliance, and that also personally. If you have asked your loyal man to marry, even that would have been enough. But to think that you took it so enthusiastically is a matter of example for others. I will personally recommend that you would be allowed to be part of the council now, your majesty, complimented the old man in a black robe as he looked at the man with darkest red eyes sitting on the throne with lazy eyes. There was another woman who was sitting in the corner with a red face. She was having a hard time keeping that smile on her face, which was full of scorns. Her grip on the glass of wine had been so tight that her perfectly manicured nails could break at any second. When they heard the footsteps, their neck instinctively turned to look at the door to see the new guest. But they were surprised when they saw that only Alfred came back. What is it? Asked the man as his eyes narrowed on his aide that had never come back empty-handed no matter what task had been given to him. Alfred nodded and shook his head as he ignored the probing gaze of everyone else and walked towards his master with a calm face. Walking closer, he whispered in the ear of his master so slowly that even after being gifted with the strong senses, the others were not able to hear a thing, though they continued to look towards them with the hope that they would at least get a hint. The bored and tired face of Raphael lit up when he heard the man, and a smirk brought on his lips. His dim and dark red eyes twinkled with a ray of light that only accentuated his pale face. Once Alfred was done, he took a few steps back and bowed his head. What is it? Is there some kind of problem? Asked the old man with the black robe as 3 deep lines formed on his forehead when he looked at Raphael with worry. Nothing like that. I will be back in a few minutes. With that, he stood up and walked out of the room without giving any further explanation, leaving both baffled. While Alfred looked at his master with mischief, as he followed him like a dark shadow. All the maids bowed their heads when Raphael walked out of the room and descended the stairs. There was a maid standing in every 5th stair with a knee-length uniform and a cleaning duster in their hands or tray filled with blood. Ignoring them all, he took lazy steps towards a room and walked in. 2 maids bowed their heads again when he stood in front of the mirror. Bring me the white suit of my marriage. There was a smile on his face as if he was joyous on the occasion of his marriage. The maids looked at him with shock but did not dare to waste even a second just because they were shocked. The vampire was eccentric. They did not want to lose their lives just because they were staring at him. They both bowed their heads, and one of them moved forward to take his coat, while the other one went in and brought a new white suit that would be appropriate for the groom. Once done, he looked at himself in the mirror and then walked towards a closet and took out a black box from it. Opening it, he took out a ring and then chuckled as if he remembered a personal joke, but his laughter only created goosebumps in others. But without caring about their reaction, he walked out of the room where Alfred was waiting for him. When he had seen his master's shining eyes, he was sure that he was going to escort the lady from the carriage. But who would have thought that he would also pay effort in changing his clothes and getting ready as she had demanded? Even when he knew that his master gets excited with a new challenge, he was surprised with the efforts he had put into it. Raphael tilted his head as he looked at the shocked Alfred, and an evil grin formed on his face, as if he was going to kill anyone not for escorting his bride to the palace. That even Alfred felt the pressure emitting from him. "Are we done, or is there any other condition left?" he asked as he started walking towards the main entrance of the palace with the same cold smirk on his face. "Yes, master. Once he would be here, he had to bring a ring for me and then pledge that he would only love me and have me as her lover and wife. Not even once would he look at another woman, only then would I come out of the carriage." That was what she had added too, though it looked like Hazel was sitting in the carriage leisurely while her maids were turned unconscious from the shock of their lives. Only she knew how she could be one of them if the trepidation goes on forever. Her eyes that seemed to be droopy were still on the stairs where that fine vampire had gone. She was sure that he had gone to call his master with the smirk formed on the face of that vampire who had talked to her rudely. What an arrogant and rude person he was. He must be waiting for her downfall. Not that others were not, but he was showing it clearly on his face. Just the thought of it wanted her to beat him. But she knew that her strongest and fiercest slap would only be a tickle for him, as the vampires were known for their immense strength. She would not be surprised if he would even pull out the biggest tree and throw it on her, but it would still have been worth trying. If not for the pain, he would have surely felt insulted. Her thoughts were broken when she noticed a figure coming towards her from the stairs of the palace. Her whole body turned stiffened when she noticed the clothes of the person. It was the matching groom's uniform she had asked for. Did he actually fulfill her willful desires? Soon, when the person came closer, she could see his face clearly too. A man much taller and stronger than her, with a wide chest and slim waist. His dark red eyes were like the darkest ruby she had ever seen. His fair face was so enchanting that she could not describe it in words. His pale and thin lips and his chiseled jawline. He was the most handsome man she had ever seen. Not that she had seen many, but she had seen many portraits. He was even more handsome than the man known for their beauty in the whole empire. Darn! Who the hell said that her husband was ugly? That person must have been blind. He was a damn hot sexy god. Wait, do not forget that he was a night creature. Hazel, look into his eyes, they were red. She tried to remind herself and thank God for walking leisurely. She got enough time to compose herself back and looked at the other side as if she had not noticed his presence at all. But her hands had already tried sweaty again with the thought of him coming closer to her. Since she turned her head away, she did not notice the smile that had crept up to his lips as he looked at her direction. While they both were enjoying their own thoughts, the maids and the knights were flabbergasted. As if they had seen a ghost coming in their direction, they could not even breathe properly. They all were sure that the master would come with an annoyed face and kill her for being so demanding and rude, or else would have instructed them to do so. But not even in their dreams had they thought that Your Majesty would actually fulfill her wishes and change his clothes into a groom's suit. Was he not the one who was against going to his own marriage, saying that it would be a waste of time to travel to Human's land just for a human bride? Was he not the one who had killed all his 3 brides for reasons like they asked for tea instead of blood, or they did not wear the clothes he wanted them to wear? Then how in the world was he behaving like a docile husband now? They all were so shocked that they only came back to their senses and bowed their heads when Raphael was too close to them. One look from Alfred told them they all would be punished later for their insolent behavior. Yet the fear of getting punished later was way lesser than the anxiety of seeing what was going to happen with Hazel, their new empress who had dared to challenge his majesty. Every step that he took sounded thud, thud strongly to Hazel's heart that was about to burst any second. She almost jumped out from her seat when Alfred knocked the door again, although she had noticed that they had already reached the carriage. Sucking a deep breath, she turned to look out of the carriage and opened the door this time. "As you have asked, your all wishes are fulfilled, my lady. Would you come out of the carriage now?" asked Alfred as he pointed at Raphael, who was standing there while tilting his head and looking at his new wife, who seemed like a lost kitten but demanded and glared like a lioness. "I do not think so," she added coldly as she looked at her new husband with a cold glance. Alfred frowned as he looked at the man standing behind him in the flashy clothes that he would not have worn if not asked. But then his face lit up and he nodded. "Your Majesty, the ring and the pledge." His whisper was heard by everyone in the garden due to their strong senses, and they all stuck up a long breath. Raphael's eyes flicked, but he nodded and then took out a black box from his pocket. He opened it only to hear more gasps from the surroundings. Even Hazel was stuck dumb after seeing the dazzling ring in the hands of Raphael. Though the stone was not big, she had never seen such a stone, or was it even one? The pink diamond was so shimmering that even the bright rays of sun seemed dull in front of it. Her eyes widened, and her jaw hit the floor when she finally realized what he was holding. This. "Oh, since it was an emergency, I did not get a chance to prepare a better ring. I hope you can manage with it for now. I will prepare a better ring for you later." Hazel could not help but stare at the ring in her hands that looked completely out of the place. The ring was beautiful, but that was not what she was expecting. When she looked above, the man passed her a harmless smile that made him feel like he was an adorable person. Her cheeks turned red and she flushed when she felt his gaze on her. "Now that the procedures are done, shall we?" Raphael forwarded his hand and she held it instinctively. Since he had followed all her instructions, he had no way to deny now. But when she had thought that he would only hold her hand while going in, he pulled her closer and took her in his arms. What are you doing?" she asked, flabbergasted when she felt his face was just an inch away and his cold hands were holding her thighs and her shoulders. "Your Majesty was carrying her princess style. They would not believe it even if they were seeing it with their own eyes. How could a monster act so gently and sweetly?" The man tilted his head as he looked at the scared girl in his arms. He could feel her fast heartbeat and fear in spite of all her efforts as she tried to act calm all this while. Yet he felt a bit curious on how the girl would act when she reached in. "Isn't it one of the norms of your empire too?" he asked with a raised brow as his bloody eyes created hole in her skin. She knew that it was a tradition that a newly wedded husband took his wife in his arms when they entered their home, and only kept her down when she reached their room. She had never thought that a man who did not even find it necessary to come into his own marriage would do that. What was he trying to do? Why was he trying to fulfill her every wish? She could not believe that a night creature could be this much considerate towards his food. Then why was he carrying her in his arms towards their room? Wait. It finally dawned on her that he was carrying her to a room. The night creatures were known for their thirst for blood and sex, but was she ready to be part of any of them? Knew who? All of the knights that were following halted listening to her sudden scream, but the man that was holding her in his arms did not even blink. Even Alfred tilted his head and looked at them with confusion. "Is there some problem, my dear wife?" The wife's words came so naturally from his mouth that Hazel felt stunned for a second. How easily was he talking to her and treating her as his wife, that if she did not know any better, she would have thought that it was a love marriage. I am hungry. If she would be given time to eat, she would get some time to make another plan to save herself. Even if he was acting to be considerate for some reason, he would feed her when she would demand for food. Right. So am I, my dear wife. As if reading her thoughts, a smirk formed on his lips as he licked them seductively that her heartbeat increased once again. But then her eyes fell on the two fangs that she could see from this proximity. They looked too sharper. What if? She could imagine him digging those sharp fangs in her neck and sucking her till her body fell on the floor in a limp state. Her face turned white just with the thought of it. What did he even mean by telling her that he was hungry? Was he taking her to the room so that he would fulfill his hunger? She did not know how to refuse politely that she did not want to be his food when he saw her tilting his head to the back and laughing. I mean, we both can have dinner together. Once again his soft voice rang in her ears and her whole body shivered in his arms and he smirked. If that was what he meant then, why did he even lick his lips and touch his tongue on his fangs while looking at her neck like that? She was not going to believe that he was so harmless. The sound of opening the door finally brought her out of her thoughts, and her gaze instinctively went towards the door. Two people who were sitting in the room also turned to look at them, and their eyes widened the moment they saw that the girl was in the arms of Raphael, who was walking inside the room leisurely. They both stood up on their seats as Raphael reached closer to them. "You both look too surprised. I thought that you were already expecting her presence." "That, yes, your majesty. I, Edward, the head of the council for the three empires, welcome you to your new home. I hope you did not have any trouble in reaching here." His tone started a bit awkwardly, but it turned normal soon. He was an experienced and old man who saw many whims of the man, who was standing like a loving husband in front of his eyes. A member of the council, the member who had chosen her to be his wife. Were they here to see if she was safe here or not? After all, this was a matter of war between all three empires. Is that why he was behaving so lovingly to her? To show that she was safe here and he cared about her, so that he could maintain his image? Did that mean that the man could help her in keeping alive? A bright smile formed on HRE lips when the thought passed her mind. That looked enchanting. "Now that you ask about it, I have a few complaints." She looked at them with a pleasing smile, but her eyes were sharp and alert. As the words left her mouth, the expressions of the old man suddenly turned grim. For generations, humans and vampires were cohabiting together, but in the past few days, the conditions were becoming miserable with more humans dying at the hands of vampires, and the situation was waging a war. It had taken great efforts to create an alliance of marriage, or else the three empires could end up in war. The situation was more sensitive than it was shown. There was no place for mistakes. That was why he had asked to choose the meekest girl that would never complain and always present a good image, that she had been treated very well here. Who would have thought that the girl would come in the arms of the darkest emperor yet complain? How was she a kind and meek girl? That I was alone in my marriage. Could it be called a difficulty that I have to kiss a sword instead of a living being? She asked as she pointed to the vampire to let her go now. She had finally found the answer to all her questions. It was this man. He was the one who could ensure that she would stay alive and healthy, as he needed her to show the cordial relationship between humans and vampires. The place where you live is too warm. That could affect the health of the night creatures. If you want a wedding with proper traditions, you could always plan one here, since you are the new empress," replied the man with a courteous tone, but his voice was full of pressure, as if telling there was no space for further discussion. And before she could reply, the lady sitting there stood up, and looked at the girl with a frown on her face. To think that you would start to complain the moment you would enter the palace. I wonder how the humans had trained you to stand against us. How could a person like you be the one ruling us? Her tone was sharp and poisonous, and so was her eyes. She was shooting daggers at Hazel the moment she had entered the room in the arms of Raphael. And to ask me that, you are. She raised a brow as she walked past them and sat on the chair, and passed a lazy look to the lady who was glaring at her without even a single ounce of worry on her face. She was sitting there alone while everyone else was standing, showing how arrogant and strong she was. But only she knew that she sat because she was afraid that her knees would give away, and she would fell on the floor by the pressure the vampires were emitting on her. Raphael, who could hear her heartbeats just like her words, had an amused and curious smile on her face. How the girl was so scared, yet she was not ready to show it to others. Do you think just because you are chosen as the bride of the vampire lord, you could show this much arrogance? Even he is standing, then what right do you have to sit like that? Scarlet could not bear that a mere human was trying to show that she was superior to them. Tusk, you are so noisy. Did you see my husband complaining? Then who are you to ask such questions? Asked Hazel without even passing the woman any further glance, afraid that she would beat her the moment their eyes would meet. As if finally gaining the right path, Scarlet raised her head and looked at Raphael. She knew more than anyone how eccentric the man was. He killed people just for fun, then how could he bear a girl that was challenging her authority directly? Raphael, she called him with an aggrieved tone as she pointed at the girl. Would you stand there silently while the girl continued to insult us? Her tone turned sharper again when her eyes fell on the girl who was sitting there with crossed legs and closed eyes as if she had already been tired of the discussion. Oh, is she? He asked with an exaggerated surprise in a gentle tone as he walked towards the other side of the table and sat on his seat leisurely. I did not know when she did that. All she did was to ask who were you to command her, when I did not mind that she had sat on the chair. Since she had traveled so far, she must be tired. There is nothing wrong with taking some rest. Is it? He asked as he tilted his head and looked at Scarlet. His words not only stunned Scarlet, but Edward and Hazel were stupefied too. Hazel had done nothing but sit in the carriage all this time, so how could her legs be tried? It was as lame as their empire was warm when she left the palace full of snow. But she kept her silent. She could not fathom what the man was thinking, so she did not want to go against him. As long as he was supporting her whims, she would just bask in that glory. Who knows, that could be her last breath. When her eyes went to Edward again, how much was his presence able to secure her? Are you supporting her? Asked Scarlet in a tone that was filled with shock and complaint, but a single gaze from the man turned her mouth shut in an instant. Do not mind her. She is my aunt, Lady Scarlet. She was the one who used to handle the affairs of the palace so far, and now she would train you to handle everything and deal with all the conditions. So you would work under her till you learn your duties as an empress. That meant that she would have more than enough ways to torture her later. How could he say that not to mind that lady who was going to be her head? She glared at the man with her animated eyes, but the man did not even turn to look at her. Since you have already met the lady, let me escort you out, Edward. The lady is hungry and needs to rest after dinner. Or are you still not satisfied that she would be treated well? Raphael had that gentle and harmless smile on his face that was giving him a glow of an angel, but Edward knew better. The man was nothing but a devil who could devour the souls of others without even letting them know. He had done more than his duty while waiting for the girl for hours, so he nodded and walked out with Raphael and Alfred. Just when they reached door, Raphael stopped in his tracks and looked back at Scarlet. By the way, the lady is hungry. Sever her the meal and take good care of her. The man looked at his aunt with a meaningful gaze, and a smirk formed on the face of the lady as she bowed her head perfunctorily and nodded. Of course, it would be my pleasure to take care of the new empress. Raphael's eyes narrowed on the face of Scarlet, but without saying a word, he nodded and walked out of the room. There was a placid smile on his face that did not clear what was in his mind. Once all three men left, Scarlet looked at the girl like a predator looking at her prey. Her eyes had turned sharp while there was a smirk on her face that was saying to Hazel, "You are gone now. So you are hungry, my lady. My bad, I forgot to order a meal for you." She replied in a sweet tone and then turned to look at the maid standing at the sidelines. "Bring the food for both of us. We will have our meal right here." Hazel was sure that the lady did not like her, and it was more than her being human. There was no way that she would serve her dinner and have a good chat with her over a meal. "You have to learn manners and etiquette, Lady Stagenrib. But to not worry, I will guide you well and train you perfectly so that you would come to our use." The lady swirled the glass containing red liquid in her hands with a sweet smile on her face that was rather scary than her threatening glance just a while ago. What was even in that glass that she was swirling? Could it be that it was blood? She would not be surprised if the girl was drinking the blood in front of her to remind that she was nothing but their food. Soon the steps of the maids, who brought a lot of dishes and served them on the side table near the sofa, could be heard. The lady that was her aunt too now, but did not look even a day older than Hazel, walked towards the sofa with a dadding smile over her face. Even the way she walked was elegant and classy. The silt in her black dress shows off her fair skin with every step that only accentuates her sexiness and confidence. She sat there with her legs crossed and she picked up her fork and Hazel followed. Though it was an excuse when she told Raphael that she was hungry, but now that she saw a lot of food, her empty stomach reminded her that she had not eaten anything in the whole day too. She sat down on the other side and tried to avoid the girl and concentrated on the food, but when the lid was taken off, all her hunger died down, and all she felt was nauseated when she looked at the meal in front of her. The steak was not even rare. The dish was still red in color, and when she touched the fork with it, she could feel the blood coming out of it. While the drink was bloody in color, and she did not even want to know if that was blood or red wine that had been served to her. "What happened, Lady Stagenrib? I thought that you were hungry," asked Scarlet with a raised brow as she looked at the pale face of the girl and finally felt relieved. She wanted to show that even if she was announced as the Empress, she was nothing but an empty flower vase that should know her place. To think that she dared to challenge their authority with that arrogance. "We don't appreciate tardiness, Lady Stagenrib. Since you are hungry, you should eat. Or are you going to waste the food?" asked Scarlet as she raised her bow and looked at the girl with disdain. She was waiting for the girl to say that she could not eat the food, so that she could exaggerate how she had insulted the food most of the vampires eat. She had intentionally not cooked the meat at all when they themselves ate the medium-done steak. Hazel looked at the dishes. Even when there were a few other dishes too, most of them were looking uncooked and strange that she lost all her appetite just by looking at them. But to think that she would lose so easily, then how would she be able to survive this place all her life? A look of determination filled her eyes, and a sweet smile crept up to her lips that surprised Scarlet, who was enjoying her misery. "Of course, but since this is my first meal, should I not deserve a special menu than an ordinary one?" she asked in a causal tone, and then looked at the food in front of her with disdain. "What do you mean?" Scarlet glared at Hazel with her fierce eyes. She did not understand why the girl was not scared, though her heartbeat was faster. Her face had an eerie calmness that was crawling on Scarlet's skin. "Since I am the Empress, I should have the right to choose what I want to eat. Though the meal is nice, it is common. I want to have cake to celebrate my marriage and chocolate." And the girl continued as she ignored the red and purple face of Scarlet and concentrated on the maid standing in front of her. But her maid did not dare to move even an inch. She was scared to her wits looking at the argument of both ladies. "Did you not hear me?" asked Hazel, and the maid flinched. "That, my lady." Hazel raised her hand before the maid continued further. "I did not want to hear any excuses. Do not forget who you are serving here. If you want to continue, you have to decide where your loyalty lies." The voice and tone was so cold that it left shivers on the skin of the maid, and she did not even dare to look at the red face of Scarlet. "Yes, my lady, I apologize for my impudence." With that she bowed her head and left, leaving fuming Scarlet alone. "Now that you are done with your meal, you do not need to worry about giving me company since you did not like tardiness," she replied as she picked up the glass of water and sniffed it. Once sure that it was normal, she took a swig of it rather nonchalantly. But when Scarlet did not move, Hazel raised a brow and added, "Do not forget that the Council is personally taking care of the truce. The peace treaty of the two empires solely depends on my reply. You do not want me to get injured as proof that I got hurt the moment I arrived, right?" Hazel raised a brow and swirled the water of her glass just like Scarlet did. But the moment words left her mouth, Scarlet hissed. Her fangs peeked out from her lips that left Hazel stunned. "She cannot bite me! She cannot bite me!" Hazel started chanting, though not sure if it would work when Scarlet glared at her for one more time before standing up and leaving. The pressure Scarlet had used pushed the chair backwards that it fell on the floor, with a thud giving Hazel the fright of her life. She patted her chest and took a few deep breaths once she was alone in the room. Her face had turned ashen and her head fell on the floor as if it did not have any life. "My lady, are you okay?" Hazel only opened her eyes when the maid called her in a worried tone, and Hazel raised her head to look at the man. "Yes, I am. I was just tired of waiting for my meal," she replied, faking the cold tone again, and the scared maid bowed her head, afraid that she would be punished again. "Clear the table and serve me a new meal," she replied without caring what the maid thought of her. She could not trust any of them, not even the maids. They could be the ears and eyes of the emperor, or this cold beauty that called herself aunt of the emperor. Soon the table was cleared, but when she ate, she could hardly have more than a few bitesses. The fear of her future started haunting her. She was too agitated when she entered the palace, but now that the adrenal rush was gone, she realized what mess she was in. "I am tired. Can you guide me where my room is?" The maid nodded her head again as she started walking towards the exit of the office, and Hazel started following the maid while her eyes were alert as she kept observing around every nook and corner of the palace. The walls of the palace were adorned with big portraits that she had seen in her father's palace too. The only difference was that they were all young and proud, and each of them had dark red eyes that were intimidating. "My lady, this is your room," said the maid, bowing her head, and Hazel nodded, as she looked at the nearby statue with interest that she did not pay much attention to her room, but just when she took a turn and entered the room, her eyes fell on the man who was sitting on the edge of the bed. A girl was sitting on his lap, and his sharp fangs sunk deeper into her skin. Her eyes were closed, but there was no pain in her eyes. If any, there was a seductive look on her face that stunned Hazel. She was looking so shocked that she did not even move. The man was holding the waist of the girl, and his eyes were closed too. Hazel only came back to her senses when the eyes of the man snapped open and met the eyes of the girl. She blinked, and then her face turned white, and she ran out of the room as if ghosts were chasing her. The man looked at her with an amused face, but did not let go of the girl in her arms. Being on the highest point on the food chain of even vampires, he had never thought of drinking blood from the containers, but straight from the warm skin of human that have fresh blood. His eyes glowed as he finally let go of the girl in his arms and like his lips that still have a drop of blood on it. "I wonder how you tasted. It took a few more seconds for Hazel to gain her composure, but she had already done a big folly by showing her fear to the bloodsucker. She could not accept defeat after coming so far. What if the man realized that she was a weak person and started to torment her? No. She had to be strong and tell him that she did not fear him and would be vocal to the council if she suffered any grievances. With that thought, she decided to go back, but her heartbeat was still racing. What if he was still sucking the blood of the girl in his arms? And they were looking very intimate. She wondered if they only stopped at drinking blood, or would they? Heat rose on her skin, and her whole face turned red as she started imagining wild scenes of theirs. She walked in the dark hall alone, as the maid had left after escorting her there, her footsteps echoing in the narrow corridor as her high heels touched the marble floor. The servants that were standing on both sides of the door passed a glance to her, but then did not react, as if they did not see her. Taking a deep breath and clenching her hands into a fist that was hiding in her dress, she walked back into the room. Just when she reached the room, the girl was adjusting her clothes, and the man was dabbing his lips with a handkerchief, making sure that there was no blood left on his lips. The girl looked at Hazel with challenging eyes before giving one seductive look to Raphael, and then bowing her head. "Then I will see you next week, my lord." Her eyes were staring at the seductive face of the man who was so close yet so distant to her. Contradicting the sweet face of the girl. He was rather nonchalant, as he did not even pass a second glance to her, but looked at the girl in front of his eyes, but frowned when he noticed that she was not looking at him but the girl. Gnashing her teeth, the girl stood up as her face turned ugly when she noticed that the Lord had not taken her eyes away even for a second since the girl had returned to the room, when he had not reacted. The first time his new wife entered the room, she had thought that he was not at all interested in her. And like others, she would meet her end soon. But by the way Lord's eyes were fixed with her, she was not sure anymore. She stood up with her friend only to see that the new empress was still staring at her. Her face immediately formed a triumphant look, showing that even when she was the wife, his husband only have eyes for her. "So you are a human." Hazel was only looking at the girl to know if she was a human or a lower level of vampire, as her governess had told her that the pure-blooded empires could drink the blood of any. And unfortunately, her husband was the purest, the strongest vampire so far. "I am, my lady." "Why?" asked the girl with an arrogant tone, as if she was superior to Hazel since she was in the arms of her husband, and as expected Hazel fumed. But instead of feeling jealous, she was angry at the man who had enjoyed the feast just a while ago. "Tell me if he is forcing you. I will help you in getting justice." Hazel moved and held the hands of the girl, afraid that she would not speak against Raphael in his presence. "You do not need to be scared of anyone. I will help you." If that would be enough to break the truce, then even she could return back to her solitary life without being in the danger of being killed. The girl was taken aback by the sudden exclamation and did not know how to reply. Even Raphael, who was looking at the girl with twinkling eyes to see what she felt, was surprised at her sudden empathy towards the girl who was in his arms. But soon a chuckle escaped his lips when he realized her plan. She was more amusing than he had thought. What are you talking about? No one had forced me. I am here out of my free will, and I do not need anyone's help." The girl yanked Hazel's hands away and glared at her with ferocity. Was she trying to ruin her image in front of the Lord? Panicked with the thought, SH turned hastily to look at Raphael. "My lord, I swear that I had not said anything to the lady. She had assumed everything by herself. It is my honor to serve you since the start, and if possible I would have been the only one serving you." Her eyes were filled with adoration and lust when she looked at the man seductively. But once again she was disappointed that the man was not even looking at her. "Do you want to get rid of her, my dear wife?" he asked the girl, who was looking confused as her brows were furrowed and her cheeks were puffed up. Hazel tilted her head and looked at the amusing smile of the man as if he was watching a good show. She felt irked by the way he was looking at them as if they were not human, but only his means of entertainment, but still nodded her head, as she did not want a young and beautiful girl to die because he sucked all her blood. Her reply only widened the smile on the face of the man, as if he had won a great reward. Sure, I will free her from today, but in exchange, you have to serve me at her place whenever I am thirsty again. Is it okay, my dear wife? Boom! The words fell in her ears no less than explosion. She finally realized what it meant by digging your own grave. She looked at the vampire with horror as her face turned pale instantly. If the girl would have complained, she could have gotten rid of the ordeal, but who would have thought that she would fall in the well instead? My lord, I have been serving you for a long. How can you? Even the girl could not believe that. She had been giving her blood since the time she had first met the Lord in the party. Since then her status had risen, and she was treated preciously in every party and function. She had received so many gifts, and her status had risen with time. She was basking in the glory just by giving a few glasses of blood, then she did not mind to do it. But who would have thought that the Lord, who did not give heed to what the councils would agree at the word of this girl so easily? Her eyes filled with pure hatred as she gnashed her teeth and stared at the woman as if she would tear her down and kill her that instant. Raphael, who was still enjoying the pale face of his wife, tilted his head and passed a gaze to the girl who had been giving her blood for a long time and always looked at him seductively, trying to take off her clothes every time they had been alone in the room. He knew too well that she wanted to raise her status and power by riding his coattails, and he never minded it since she was nice in bed and had sweet blood too. As a vampire, and that also at his prime age, he had his own physical requirement that had been filled by the girl very efficiently, but it did not mean that she was special to him. To think that you can ask me a question back, I have underestimated your guts. Take her away. As the words left his mouth, the face of the girl turned ashen and she fell on her knees. No, I did not mean that, my lord. I have been serving you all my life. Please forgive this lowly person's mistake. Tears started to form in the corner of her eyes as she gulped. She knew better than anyone what this man was capable of, and she did not want to be the one at the receiving hand. Then you better leave and never show me your face again. She nodded at his nonchalant words, relieved that her life had been spared, and dragged her staggering body from there. Once she was gone, he smirked and looked at another scared bunny in front of her who was acting nonchalant again. Just by thinking that you will be serving me, I am thirsty again, my dear wife. Come here. His seducing voice left a shiver in her body that she had to wrap her arms around her body to not tremble. She raised a brow as she looked at him confidently. I did not say yes to your condition. It was you who imagined, so do not expect me to give you my blood. Who knew how much you would drink and kill me right there? She replied with a glare to show that she was not at all afraid of him. But as my wife, you are going to share the room with me. Who knows, I might feel thirsty at night and could not control my hands and mouth. Raphael chuckled, seeing his wife's eyes widen before it narrowed on his face. Now that I think about it, I am already sleepy, so why don't you come and lay beside me? He asked in the same soft and seductive tone. Before her arrival, he had already asked his aide to prepare a different room for her, as he had never shared his bed with anyone. Even when he spent the time with other ladies, he went to their room, had his fill, and left. Sleeping the whole night on the same bed was not something he wanted to try, but to look at the fidgeting girl and her expressions, he could not help but tease her further. I have a habit of tossing too much on my bed, and I even sleep talk and snore sometimes, so I do not think that we should sleep together for now. She raked her brain hard to think of all the excuses she could make, but nothing seemed to work much as the man continued to stare at her with amused eyes. and I am still adapting to the change of the palace, so I need some rest and time to sleep together." The last line was barely about the sound made by a mosquito, but he was still enjoying her flustered face. "All right, you can rest. I have something to handle anyway." He stood up abruptly as he nodded and was about to leave the room when she did not know why but felt an ominous feeling in her heart. How did he suddenly give up the idea of sleeping with her when he was so adamant today? "Oh, may I know what urgent work you have in the middle of the night?" she asked, trying her best to sound nonchalant and hide her curiosity when the man chuckled and turned to look at her. "Are you getting interested in my life, my dear wife?" There was something different when he called her his wife. She feels like her stomach churn every time he does so. "That, I am going to execute all the teachers who have given you the training to be a good empress and my wife." The words were ringing in her mind as the bell of the siren. She couldn't help but stand frozen there for a long time. When she came back to her senses, the vampire was already gone. Was it a threat for me, or had he really gone to kill all of them? No matter how she thought, she did not find any sense of logic behind his sudden decision. He was more eccentric than she had thought. She slumped on the bed with a thud and stared at the ceiling. The intricate design of flowers was looking beautiful, yet she felt that it was a web she had been struck on. She tried her best to stay awake and alert, but soon her eyes started to turn heavy and she gave up. Raphael had only walked out of the room when Alfred was already standing out of the door. "Your Majesty," he bowed his head with respect, "I have confirmed that lady was taught by the governess sent by Lady Scarlet only." Ahem. He continued to walk and Alfred followed as they both stopped only when they entered another room. The room was slightly dim with only a single candle lit in the center of the room. The man sat on the office seat and then looked at him. "Would you handle the matter or shall I go?" Although the voice was nonchalant, Alfred could see a trace of bloodlust filling his eyes, and he knew better than anyone he was infuriated. "I will handle the matter and send her head to Lady Scarlet as a gift," he asked carefully, and the man finally nodded and hummed. You are still wise. Is there anything else?" He looked at Alfred, who was still standing there even when they were done. It only happened when there was something in his mind, but he was hesitating to start it. "That, my lord. Shall I investigate the girl again? She did not seem like she was described," he asked carefully as he observed the actions of his master. "There would be no need. I will observe her personally." There was a subtle smile on his lips that confused Alfred. He had known this man for a long time, but never had he let his guards down in front of even his family. Then what was so special about that girl? Though he had many questions in his mind, he did not dare to ask them. "Then I shall leave. The news will reach in your ears before sunrise." With that he bowed his head and left the room. Picking up the glass of water from the table, she took one cold swig of it. "Even after having more than my fill, I am feeling thirsty again, Hazel. I wonder how you might react if you found me having a sip of yours." He chuckled as he looked at the ceiling but did not go out of the room. "My lady, your Majesty is calling you." "Anne, I am feeling tired. Can I sleep an hour more today?" Hazel mumbled as she tossed on the bed and turned to sleep again, leaving the maid on the pins and needles. Last night she woke up with a start listening to the sound of falling glass. She looked around, but there was no one in the room. After that, she was so scared that she did not sleep even for a second, afraid that someone was hidden there waiting for her to fall asleep again. "My lady, Lady Scarlet would be furious if you do not reach on time for breakfast," she urged in a pleading voice, but the sleeping beauty did not pay any heed to it. "If you will not wake up, your Majesty will come personally to take you with him," she added, thinking that it might wake up the girl finally. But Hazel turned again and continued to sleep. She would not wake up even if the whole palace burnt to ashes. She would not wake up even if God would come to take her personally. With that thought, she covered her head with the blanket and continued to sleep. Bam! The door of her room was opened with a strong force, and the clinking of high heels filled the room. Scarlet entered into the room with a red face, and hair darker, red eyes were blazing fire. "How dare you keep me waiting even after creating such an uproar? Do you not love your life anymore?" That was not an empty threat. The maid, who knew the reason for her anger, trembled and tried to make her invisible by getting one with the wall. When Hazel still did not respond, Scarlet felt agitated. She was about to throw the bed in the midair, but she remembered what Raphael had told her. The girl could not be injured as there were close eyes of the council over the matter. She gnashed her teeth as she knew that the girl was taking advantage of this matter. But could she let a human sit over their heads and do what she wanted? Not in this life. Her hands clenched into a fist, and she looked around when her eyes fell on the table. She walked towards the table and picked the jug of water from there and smirked. Walking back towards the bed where Hazel was sleeping without a care in the world, she poured water on the bed with a smirk on her face. She was sure that in this cold, if she stayed wet for a long time, she would catch cold, as humans were frail with weak immunity, and Hazel could not even blame her for getting cold. "Tusk, I did not know that the Aunt of His Majesty is the one responsible for washing used sheets. Shall I ask Raphael to consider you and give you better work? After all, you are still part of the family." Hazel looked at her with disdain, but more than irritated. Scarlet was surprised as how she had left the bed without her knowing. With widened eyes, she looked at the wet bed and then at Hazel, who was still smirking with a bright face and beautiful emerald eyes. With confusion, she picked up the blanket only to find the pillows adjusted, as if someone was sleeping there. "You tricked me." Scarlet could not believe that a mere human was able to fool her, and that also enjoying it. She was so furious that she did not wait to confirm it was Hazel before punishing her. "As a pure-blooded vampire, you are quite slow, and here I thought that vampires can hear our heartbeats and emotions," she asked with a raised brow. That was the only reason she had paid so much effort in keeping her heartbeat normal and her expressions calm. Her governess had told her that they have strong senses, smelling and hearing was their strength. Are you looking down on me?" Her chest heaved up and down as she asked that to Hazel. Not ever in her life had she been humiliated this much, or a mere human could never have challenged her. "What did I do? I was sleeping soundly when the maid had asked me to wake up since you wanted to meet me. Now that I went to wash myself up, you are blaming me only for tricking you. Why would I do that?" Hazel blinked her eyes as she looked at the red and purple face of Scarlet, who looked like she would faint right here with anger. "I am glad that vampires had cold blood, or else I would have to worry that you will have a heart attack. You should exercise more to keep yourself healthy, Aunt. You are not getting any younger." Though she said that in a sweet and concerned voice, it was no less than lightning thrown on her head. Her fangs came out instantly as she looked at Hazel with bloodlust. "Did you just call me old? You think just because you have protection of counsel, you can do anything. Do not forget that you are not the first to get married to Raphael and not the last one. Beware of the dark areas, Lady Stagenrib. Who knows which demon lurks in the dark and would devour your soul?" Her eyes glowed red, and her face, that fuming just a while ago, turned calm, and a smirk formed on it. That confused Hazel. "You do not need to worry about me. I have grown up alone in a dark palace that was infamous for being desolated even by gods. If I would have been afraid of demons, I would not have been talking to one." She looked straight into the eyes of Scarlet, who was gnashing her teeth. What else would they do except killing her? But she knew even that would only happen when the council would stop keeping an eye on her safety. She would find a way to run away from here till then and start a new life. Till then, she had to make sure that they knew that she was not a pushover. "Now are you going to stand here all day? I need to change and get ready for breakfast. So you better leave." Without sparing another glance to Scarlet, Hazel walked back towards her dressing table and sat there leisurely. Though her eyes were still settled on the woman who was standing there with a fuming face, she did not let her face show how anxious was with her presence. Thank God. She knew that she would do something with her, therefore she ran away, putting her pillows in her place, or else that cold water would have fallen all over her body. You are being too haughty by getting the seat of an empress. Huh? Do you think that others would fear you because you even killed your governess who had taught you? No, everyone would only loathe you that you did not even keep respect for the one who had taught you. The whole body of Hazel turned rigid for a second, her hands halted. The way Scarlet spat through words as if Hazel was the one who had killed the old lady. Her hands that were on her laps felt like it was painted red by the blood. She felt nauseated and hurt. She could not believe that he had actually killed her, but why was she so worried about it? For the life of a human, why she hated them so much. Yet she could not help but shudder. Their life was nothing for them but a toy that they could play with any time and then threw at us whenever they were tired. She couldn't help but feel hatred for all of them. Even when her mind was facing the tempest, she did not utter a word. What if the lady was trying to agitate her so that her facade would fall? With that thought, she collected herself again and parted her lips with a sweet smile. I did not like the woman. She was too noisy. So I generally complained to Raphael that I did not like her. Who would have thought that he would actually kill her for me? Her eyes filled with arrogance while her face turned dreamy as she turned to look at Scarlet, whose pale face had turned paler and her nails were digging deep into her palms. What do you think, Aunt? Is Raphael madly in love with me and following everything I say? Shall I ask him that you are too irritating too, and see what he would do then? Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.